We're starting a new series today called Love Hate. You've probably heard the term. It's a love-hate relationship. We can't decide how we feel about each other. Sometimes we get along, sometimes we don't. It's a love-hate thing, right? And we see these words love and hate, and we tend to throw both of them around pretty loosely, right? It's not so much a big deal, but it kind of is. We say, oh, like today, I said, I love bacon, right? But I also say that I love Kristen, my wife. So do I really love bacon as much as I love my wife? No, I don't. I really don't. I promise you. But we use the same word for a lot of things. Or we say, man, I hate it when, let's say you hate mowing the grass, right? But then you also hate more serious things like death and people having to go through terrible time. You hate that. But it's like, do you hate it as much as mowing your grass? Not really, but you throw the word out there. But love is still a big deal to us, right? We kind of have a culture that also loves to hate. So it can be also confusing. You hear these words thrown around. I'm even feeling confused just trying to put it into words. But you have a culture that loves to hate on other people or ideas. So if love is such a big deal, why does hate, and specifically hating on people, seem to be such a natural thing for us to do, right? It's pretty easy for us to hate something or to say that we hate something, but it's not always easy for us to love something. So there's a lot of different ways that we can talk about hate, right? There's a lot of different ways that we show hate towards things, or that we show that we dislike, or here's a word for you, loathe something. But because we have, limited time here, we're going to focus on just one way that we show hatred a lot of times, and that's gossip, right? I know all of you just went, gossip, we're going to talk about gossip, right? But this is something that we don't talk about with other people a lot of times. We might talk about other people that gossip, but really all of us are guilty of it, right? Isn't it already gossip for us to talk about how others are gossiping all the time? Let me tell you, they gossip all the time. And we're saying that behind their back, but right there we're doing the same thing. So, you may have times where you're like, I don't talk about other people, but I know people who do talk about other people. But in reality, what we need to be doing is looking in the mirror at ourselves and saying, wait a second, how often do I gossip and talk about people in a way that is not showing love towards them, right? I mean, I keep using the word gossip, but I guess now y'all are saying like stuff like spilling the tea, right? I know it's a little cringy for me to say it, but I figured I'd bring it to your level in a way that you would understand, right? So you may be talking about trash talking, gossiping, spilling the tea about people. There are several different words, but there are several different reasons a lot of times we will do these things, right? Our own insecurities, things that we don't feel very secure about, and suddenly we feel like we have to bring others down. And, another reason is really easy bonding with people. This is kind of a funny one because it's really easy to like people that you hate things with, right? You have a common hatred and a common thing that you can gossip about. So suddenly you have something in common with them and you're all of a sudden really great friends because you can talk about these things. And sometimes it's fun, right? You get all the details and you're like, this is so interesting. Wow, I didn't know that. I can't wait to tell someone else. But I won't say that I'm going to tell them. And I'm definitely not gossiping. But boy, I can't wait to tell somebody. Or maybe it's a competitive advantage. Maybe you're looking at something that feels a little darker. You're like, I want to try to ruin this person's reputation so I get something in return. Maybe you're wanting to take an opportunity from someone so that you can have it, easier. And that's a really dangerous one. And sometimes you have like an innocent intention with gossip. You don't really mean to, but you kind of fall into it. But also, here's the thing. Gossip is not something that just is in middle, high school, and college. This continues on all the way through adulthood. Trust me, it does not stop with just when you're with your friends in a very close environment. It happens in the home. It happens between people in the workplace. It even happens in the church where you feel like it shouldn't, but a lot of times it does. So it doesn't just stop at high school or middle school. It's just a person thing. We all know, maybe teachers even, or adults that do this. But it's so easily accepted by society, right? We kind of push it to the side. You're like, well, it's not so bad to gossip. You know, everybody kind of does it. Or maybe you say, that's not really gossip. We're just, letting the other person know the information. I want them to know it because, what would happen if they didn't, right? We write it off. And the funny thing about that is we all really deep down know that gossip isn't a good thing, right? But we still do it. If the gossip is turned around on us, then suddenly we realize how bad gossip is. I'm going to tell you a story here. One time when I was in 8th grade, I know, get this, I was gossiping about someone I knew. There was this guy and he had a lot of gel that he always put in his hair, which in 8th grade was like super weird to me. And so I was going around and I would talk to people and be like, do you see how much gel this guy has in his hair? It's so much product, right? I know I was thinking about weird things in 8th grade, but I just thought it was strange. Well, one day it caught up with me. I was talking to someone about it and I turn around and there he is. And he heard me say it and it just immediately felt terrible. I didn't have to be confronted. Like someone didn't have to say, hey, I think that him hearing you, that was, you were doing something bad there. I immediately knew, as soon as I saw him and knew that he had heard me, I knew I had done something wrong right away. So everyone knows gossip is a bad thing when it's about them, but in a culture like ours, a culture that loves to hate on people and ideas, how is it possible for us to stop this? So, interestingly enough, this was something that people dealt with a long time ago too. And our good friend Paul, the apostle, he was writing to the Ephesians about this. So in the book of Ephesians, he's writing to a group of Christians in the city known as Ephesus. And it was written to them. And what's interesting about that city was it was a port city. They had a lot of traffic going in and out. They had a lot of different cultures, a lot of different diversity, a lot of different religions. And in a town full of a bunch of different types of people, it's perfect fuel for gossip. There's plenty to talk about, right? You're like, wow, there's someone with a different view. I'm going to talk about that with someone else who I hold the same view with, right? It was easy for them to fall into gossip. But what Paul was writing about in the book of Ephesians was that he wanted Christians to operate in a different way in that culture. So his letter to them is all about how followers of Jesus are supposed to be living unique lives, not something that blends in. So I'm going to read Ephesians 4:29. It says, do not let any unwholesome talk come from your mouths. It's pretty plain and simple. So in the original language that this was written in, this was written in Greek. I can't read Greek, but thankfully there are people that do read Greek. And so they have written down a lot of information about it. And one of those pieces of information is that the word unwholesome in the original Greek, the root word of that, I know this feels like school, but the root word of that means rotten. So really what Paul was saying is, don't let any rotten speech come from your mouths, right? So when I think of the word rotten, I think about fruit. Fruit is something that just goes bad so quick, just out of nowhere, it seems. One day you put an apple down and then next time you look at it, it's just brown and moldy and you're like, what happened? How did it get this bad? How did I let it happen so quick? And what happens too is if you put a rotten apple in a basket of a ton of apples, what happens to the rest of them? They all start to rot. They start to catch that. So what Paul is saying is, don't let your speech begin to rot things around you, right? So gossiping can rot friendships, relationships, your reputation, but it's so slow that you don't even see it happening. You know, one minute it's normal, like the apple, and then the next minute you're like, how did it get this bad, right? How did it get this bad? And last time I was looking at it, my reputation was fine. And suddenly I'm known for this. And the more people you're around, it might even leak into other people's lives. And they might start to take on that trait of having rotten speech towards people. So you don't want to have that like rotten vibe going on, right? So here's the thing. It's not, it rots things around you. And it might be an indication of something unwholesome or rotten inside of you. So Jesus talked about this himself in Mark 7:15. He said, it's not what goes into your body that defiles you or kind of ruins you. You're ruined or defiled by what comes from your heart or what comes from the inside. So more than the words you speak, it's about the motivation that causes you to say certain things or participate in certain conversations, right? What's the heart behind what you are saying? That's what Jesus is saying is important. Not so much what you say, but why? Why did you say it? What was your purpose behind it? So, here's the thing. Later in Ephesians, Paul says, do not let any, rotten talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. I'm going to read that again because that's a really important verse. Do not let any unwholesome or rotten talk come from your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, so that it will benefit anyone who listens. So, if you choose to build others up and care about their needs and help them, you're going to already be choosing words that benefit them instead of words that are constantly bashing them, right? So if you're, in a situation where you're wanting to be helpful to someone, you're not going to start insulting them and hating them. You're going to start building them up. You're going to start complimenting them. You're going to start saying things that are helpful to them. And the word helpful is so perfect for this. But when you think about that person, you start to change your outlook in life. You start to change how you want to speak. And you may know people too who constantly trash talk. They spread rumors. They always have some sort of mean joke to say towards someone, or they're always talking about people behind their backs. But when you think about that person, you immediately think about that part of them, right? No one likes to be around someone who is constantly being mean to someone. So when you bring up that person's name, suddenly everybody's like, ugh, that's the person who can't be nice to anybody, or that's the person who's always talking about people behind their backs, right? So what has happened is that trait of gossip has become part of their identity. So, do you want to be known as someone who loves others or as someone who hates others by the way they talk? Your conversation, it really isn't a question of, whether or not you should say it, but the question is, what do you want to be known for, right? What do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known as a person who is loving in their speech? Or do you want to be known as a person who is showing hatred for someone? So the good news is that you have a choice here. You get to decide who you want to be and what you want to be known for. And right now is a great part of life to get in the habit of building others up in life. The longer you have the habit of constantly bringing others down, the harder it is going to be to break that habit. So now, while you're in middle school or high school, start building other people up. in life rather than constantly tearing them down. Because in the end, it's going to rot and it's going to chip away at the character that people see, right? So, with that choice, let love be what you're all about. So, we sometimes decide what we're going to say by answering these questions. I wrote a few down here that we a lot of times think about when we get in a conversation. Will it make me look funny? Will it make me look cool? Will I get along with people better? Will it make me look smart? Is it mostly true? You know, there might be some lies in there, but is it mostly true what I'm saying? And will it help me get along better with this group? Man, that is not something that stops in high school. That continues on into adulthood. Trust me. But we need a new question. And like I said earlier, Paul gave a perfect word in Ephesians. And it is this helpful? That's the new question you need to be thinking about. Not all of these others, but is it helpful for us to be speaking this way? And that's all we need to ask is, are the words that I'm saying helpful? Will they build others up? And will they make someone's life better? Or will it constantly tear them down? So imagine for a moment, let's not even say the whole world. Let's just say the group here, right? Imagine for a moment that instead of us constantly tearing people down, that we instead become a group that is always building each other up and building others up. You know, yes, we all have differences, and yes, we all have different things that might even annoy other people. I know I have tendencies that annoy other people, but what we should do is we should still love each other and build each other up in a kind way rather than going and talking behind someone's back or even to their face in a hateful way. All right? So all of us get to decide whether we're going to be known by how we love people or if we're going to be known by how much we love to hate people. So let's be love and let's be all about that. All right? Now, here's the thing. I don't have a game today, right? But what I do have is I have now got a devotion series that's going to be going with this. If you have the Bible app, you can find it on there. And to make it easier, you can go on our Instagram account here for the Hope students, and you can look, and there's a link to click. And on that link, you'll see a little tab that says join our current devotion series. So it's a 14-day daily devotion. We're going to do it as a group. You'll be able to see everybody else, and you'll be able to take notes on it. You'll be able to put I bumped my little stand here. You'll be able to write a comment at the end of each day that we can all read together. It's really cool. I would love it if you joined. I'm already in it. I've got a few that have just joined in today. So don't forget to join that. It's in the link in the bio. All right? Make sure you do that. All right?